So I remember when I was getting into improvising, I got my head around the pentatonic scales alright, and I could use them to play solos and it sounded somewhat musical. But then when I tried learning the modes and incorporating that, I just couldn't get it to sound quite like I wanted, and I didn't know how to incorporate it with all my pentatonic stuff, and overall just how to make it sound musical using these 3-note per string shapes. But when I figured out everything that I'm going to go over in this lesson, this helps things really click and helped me to use the modes in a way that wasn't so robotic and how to blend it in with my pentatonic stuff really well. We tend to think that we have our pentatonics over here and then we have our modes over here, and we kind of switch between the two like that. But what you're going to soon discover is that they're actually very similar scales and there's a lot of crossover between the two. So I've got my whiteboard out for this, and I spent more time than I'd care to admit trying to figure out how to do this on the iPad and screen record it and whatnot, but I gave up on that and we're just going to keep it old school. So over here I've got the formulas and scale degrees that belong to the major pentatonic and all the major modes, and then the minor pentatonic and all the minor modes. If this looks really confusing and you have no idea what this means right now, don't worry, it's all going to make sense soon, and it's more just a way to visually see what's going on. So we're just going to look at this top half to begin with, and our major pentatonic scale. So our major pentatonic has the first, the second note, the third note, and the fifth and sixth note of the major scale. That's all it is. If you play all the white keys from C to C on the piano, that's your C major scale. If you just play the first, second, third, skip the fourth, fifth, and sixth degree, that would give you the major pentatonic scale. Now these here, Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian, they are our major modes of all the modes of the major scale, because there's 3 major modes, 3 minor, and 1 half diminished. And across here are all the scale degrees that belong to those modes. And you'll notice these all have 7 as opposed to our pentatonic scale, which has 5. Now if we look at these, we can see there's a lot in common. First of all, we can see all these scales, they contain the 1. Pretty obvious. But they also all contain the 2, the 3, the 5, and the 6, and they all share those same scale degrees with no alterations. So the major pentatonic scale actually contains 5 of the 7 notes that belong to these 3 modes of the major scale, and all these 3 modes share those same major pentatonic notes. So the notes that give these 3 modes their color are going to be the notes that don't belong to the major pentatonic, which are going to be our 4s over here in this line, and as well as that, the 7s over here, these notes. So to play all these modes, we can just think of it as a major pentatonic scale adding a 4 and 7. And these 4s and 7s are going to be what give these modes their color. Now let's make this practical, and we're going to add these notes to our major pentatonic scale, and you're going to hear and see what I mean. So up on the screen here, I've got the major pentatonic scale, and all the scale degrees that we talked about before are written inside the notes. Now on this diagram, it's played in the key of F sharp, but we're just going to move the shape up to A to make it easier. So first, I'm just going to play through that major pentatonic shape. So we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and then it repeats 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and then repeats 1, and then finishes on the 2. Now if I want to turn this major pentatonic scale into an Ionian scale, all I have to do is look at this board and see where the S's are, because those S's represent a semitone interval, or just 2 notes that are right next to each other. So I add my 4, a semitone after my 3s, and I add my 7s, a semitone before where my 1 is again. So if we look at the screen, this is what that would look like. So first I'll add a note of semitone after the 3, right here. Then I add a note of semitone before the 1, which will be here. And then I go through the next octave, so adding a note of semitone after the 3 here. And then I can add another note, the 7, a semitone before the 1. So just by adding those 3 notes, I now have a major scale using my major pentatonic as the skeleton. So if I play that with the added notes, we have 1, 2, 3, and now our added note, our 4, 5, 6, our 7, which was an added note, and then our 1 again. Then our 2, 3, 4, our 5, 6, and then our 7 and 1 again. Then we can add the 2 if we want. So our major pentatonic was 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, 2. Now our major scale is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. So just like that, I've changed my major pentatonic scale into an Ionian scale. Now let's say I wanted to do the same with Lydian. I just look at the board and I can see I need to add this sharpened 4, which is a semitone before this 5, And again, I add a 7, which is a semitone before the 1. So I'm going to go through and add that to the major pentatonic shape. So I'm going to add a note, a semitone before my 5 here. Then I add a note, a semitone before my 1 here. And again, up the octave, a semitone before my 5. And then a semitone before my 1. This is now going to give me the Lydian scale. And what I also like about this is it's really easy to just target those color notes because you know exactly where they are because you've added them into the scale yourself. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for Mixolydian. So again, referring to this, we're going to add a 4, which is a semitone after our 3. And now we're actually going to add a flattened 7, which is a semitone after our 6. I add a note, a semitone after the 3. I'm going to add one, a semitone after the 6, which would be the flat 7. Then another one, a semitone after the 3 here. Then another one, a semitone after the 6 here, which will give me a flat 7. So now this major pentatonic shape has been changed into a Mixolydian scale. So all I've got to remember is the 4s and 7s that I need to add to my major pentatonic shapes to get the different modes. So you want to remember Ionian has a 4 and 7, Lydian has a sharp 4 and 7, and Mixolydian has a 4 and flat 7. This is obviously something you'll just need to practice a bit and get familiar with. And the cool thing is you can do this with every pentatonic shape you have. So again, if we're using the major pentatonic scale, so using this shape here, if I wanted to go over to the next shape, over here, I can do the exact same thing. So let's say I wanted to turn this second shape into Lydian, for example. I do the exact same thing. I just go through, add a note, a semitone before my 5, and a semitone before my 1 again. And it works exactly the same. So here, you can see this shape starts on the 2nd degree of the scale. So I'm going to go a semitone before my 5, and add my sharp 4 note here. And then I'm going to go a semitone before my 1 to add my 7. Then I can find another 5 over here, add a note here, which would be a sharp 4. Then I can add a note here to get my 7. Now if I play this in the key of A, so our first shape was on this A note, so this next shape, or pattern 2, will be over here on this B note. And if I get a backing track going in the key of A and I play this, I'm going to get my Lydian sound. Alright, so there I was getting my Lydian sound and I was really targeting those red notes, all those 4s and 7s, to get that color of Lydian. Now say I wanted to turn the same shape into Mixolydian, again I just look here and I can see I've got a 4, a semitone after my 3, and a flat 7, which is a semitone after my 6. So I go through and add a 4 over here, add a flat 7 over here, semitone after my 6, then I add a 4 over here, flat 7 over here. Then I can add another 4 over here if I want. This would now be Mixolydian if I play this in the key of A around shape 2 of the major pentatonic scale. So normal major pentatonic. Now I can turn this into Mixolydian. So hopefully that's making sense so far in how you can turn your major pentatonics into the modes. And you can do this with all your major pentatonic shapes, but we can also do it with the minor pentatonic shapes and all the minor modes, which is what we're going to do next. So we're going to use the exact same method as we did with the major modes and major pentatonic. But here we have our minor pentatonic, which has a 1, a flat 3, a 4, a 5, and a flat 7. And here we have our minor modes, which are Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian. And we can see that the minor pentatonic, or those scale degrees, belongs to all 3 of those minor sounding modes too. They all have a 1, they all have a flat 3, a 4, a 5, and a flat 7. So to change our minor pentatonic scales to these modal sounds, we just have to add our 2s and 6s, whatever they may be. So let's say I wanted to change my minor pentatonic to Dorian. I'm going to add a 2 and a 6. And I've written here a little S where the semitone is. So the 2 is a semitone before the flat 3, and the 6 is a semitone before the flat 7, so we're going to go and add that into our pentatonic shape. So here we've got our minor pentatonic shape, and we've got all the scale degrees written inside just like the other one. So what we needed to add was a note a semitone before the flat 3 to get a 2, and we needed to add a note a semitone before the flat 7, which would be our 6. These are the notes that we add to get Dorian. So I'm just going to add a note here before our flat 3, and then here before our flat 7. It's a bit off the diagram, but we can make it work. Then here before our flat 3 again, here before the flat 7, and then here before the flat 3. So those are all my 2s and 6s added to my minor pentatonic. Now again, we're just going to move this to the key of A to make it more simple, but it works in any key. So my minor pentatonic, 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1, flat 3. But if I add those red notes, I get 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, 2, flat 3. And this would be my Dorian mode. If I use that in the key of A, right, you get the idea. That gives me my Dorian sound. Now let's say I wanted to get a Phrygian sound from my minor pentatonic. I now just add a flat 2 note, which is a semitone after the 1, and a flat 6, which would be a semitone after the 5. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to add a note, a semitone after this 1, a semitone after this 5, again, a semitone after the 1, semitone after the 5, and a semitone after the 1. This would now be a Phrygian scale. So again, minor pentatonic with the added notes. That is now my Phrygian sound. In context, it gives me a way darker sound, which is what I tend to gravitate towards. Now last up, we have our Aeolian scale, which is this one down here. All we have to add to get this is a 2, a semitone before our flat 3, and a flat 6, a semitone after our flat 5. So very similar to Phrygian, the only difference being the 2. So instead of a flat 2, we have a normal 2. So what I can do is just change this Phrygian one by moving all the flat 2s across one semitone. So that's the first one, done. Now this one, I wouldn't put over here, just for ergonomic reasons. I can put it over here, a semitone before the flat 3, and this 2 here, I'll just move over here. This would now be an Aeolian scale. Again, in context, right, you get the idea. And again, this applies to every pentatonic shape. So if I was playing around shape 2 of my minor pentatonic scale, and I wanted to play, say, Dorian, I can just add those scale degrees to that shape. So here I've got shape 2, and you can see it doesn't start on the 1 this time, but the same process still applies. So if I wanted Dorian, I had to add a note, a semitone before my flat 3, and as well as that, a semitone before my flat 7. So I can add a note here before my flat 7, here before my flat 3, another one before my flat 7, and another one before my flat 3. Now if I'm in pattern 2 in the key of A, so over here, and I want to make that Dorian, I just add those red notes. And that gives me the Dorian scale, all built around shape 2 of the pentatonic scale. So again, this applies to every shape within your pentatonic scale. You just figure out what the scale degrees are within the shape, and then where you need to add your extra notes to get your more modal colors. And what I'll do is make this all available to download off my website in PDF form. I'll add all the modal notes to all the pentatonic shapes so you can go through and see it like that. Now you might have noticed we left out one mode, Locrian, the half diminished one, and that's because it's a bit of a special mode that has a very specific context to be used. It's over a -7 flat 5 chord, which is something you'll come across in jazz a lot. So I wouldn't worry about that one too much for now. Once you get your head around all these, then maybe delve into it a little bit. So just to recap everything, take your base pentatonic shape, whether it's major or minor, figure out which 4 and 7 you need to add to get a major sound, or if you're using the minor modes, what 2 and 6 you need to add to get the modal sounds, and then just experiment alternating between playing in your pentatonic shapes and adding in those notes to get different flavors. But hopefully this was somewhat clear and helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, but I'll see you next time.